guys, Fru here. Welcome to the continuation of our series of programming in Python, learning how to program in Python as an absolute beginner. So this particular video would focus on setting up GitHub and connecting to the repository that we're going to use for code sharing and for collaboration. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with GitHub, GitHub is one of the world leading platform for software developers to create code, to collaborate with other developers, to share their notes and artifacts as part of writing code. So if you're going to be writing Python code and building a lot of artifacts out of that, it makes sense to leverage GitHub for that. GitHub is very easy to use. It's available on the web, just like the way you can, let me move this a little bit on side. Just like the way you can go on Facebook, you can create a Facebook account, you can share images, you can share pictures, you can share comments and interact with your friends. Developers use GitHub in almost similar fashion, but this is primarily for sharing code. So as you start writing your first Python code, you might want to share that. If you want to get a snippet of code from somebody, GitHub just makes it very, very easy for that. So this video will show us how to set up GitHub and to connect to the projects that I have. If you don't have a GitHub account, I highly recommend you create one. So if you go to github.com, you can go ahead and create an account for GitHub. So that's a prerequisite. If you want to follow along and see some of the exercises that I'm going to be sharing, guys, you need a GitHub account. So just go to GitHub, go and sign up so you have an account on GitHub. It's very easy, username, password, and you can set up an account on GitHub. There is a free account, so you don't really need to pay. Now, if you're trying to do something more complex, then you might want to get the paid account. So assuming that you go ahead and you've signed up for GitHub and you have that free account, let's log in. I do have two-factor authentication, so I expect this to send me a code. And I'll go ahead. It's a one-time code, and I'll put that code. So it's just a one-time code. Let's go. All right. So we have our code. It's a one-time code, so don't bother copying that code because it's going to change the next time I log in. All right. So this is my GitHub account. I've signed in. Once you create your account, you're going to sign into something very similar to this. Now, I have a bunch of projects that are here, everything from Java, SQL, and other projects that I work on. But of course, Python is what we really care about. So I'm going to go into my Python project. And I mentioned this in my last video where you can see I've already created a template or placeholder for the curriculum we're going to be covering in this class. And this is what I want you to have access to. So if you come in here, you can see all the things we're going to be covering, right? So we're going to be talking about Python basics, operators, data structures, conditionals, loops, for loops, while loops. There's a lot of content we're going to go through. And each time I do my code and I write something, I can either just put in an email and try to email it out to you. I can put it on Google Drive and try to get you access to that Google Drive. Or the better way is, and this is where Git comes into play, is I can just commit my code into Git. And if you have access to Git, you can just go directly to my repo and get access to that. That's why Git is very, very powerful. Developers all over the place use Git. So if this is your first time, guys, I would highly recommend you get familiar with Git. You find some tutorials about Git and you can use it, right? So there is Git and then there is GitHub. GitHub is just an implementation of Git available on the World Wide Web. There are different implementations of that, but that's again for a separate video. All right, so this is my Git project for Python, and everything is available in here. So what I would do is I'll expect you guys to have access to this. This is what I expect you guys to have access to. And the way you do that is, in the last video, we talked about PyCharm. So we went ahead and we set up PyCharm. All right, so if you follow from the very last video that we had, it was just a setup of Python and PyCharm. So we'll be using this PyCharm that we have, but instead of just logging into PyCharm directly, what we'll do is we'll log into PyCharm and we're gonna connect PyCharm to Git so it can pull down all the projects that I have. So every code I've committed to Git, you can connect to my repository and you can see it as well. All right. There are many concepts that are familiar that comes in Git. One of them is clone. So all this document that I have in here, if you want to have it on your own desktop so you can have access to the files, there are many files like Python basics, for example. This is not yet complete, but I'm going to be talking about variables, numbers, strings, and a whole lot of things. All right, if you want to have access to that on your local machine so you can follow along, then you're going to have to clone this, right? The term that is used is cloning. So you want to clone my repository to your machine so you can have access to all of these files. All right, so like this file here, .py, I'll be writing some code here about variables within Python. So if you want to have it on your machine, you're going to have to clone that. So cloning is very, very simple. So once my project here loads up, this is the old project that we had. I'm not going to use this project. So what I'll do is, what I'm going to do here is I'll actually switch and I'll go to a new project within PyCharm. All right. So now what I want is I want a new project within PyCharm to use. Actually, let me do it a different way. Let's close this project. All right, so let's close that project. So what we want to do is check out, instead of creating a new project, we want to check out version control. All right, and that version control, we want to select it as Git. Okay, let me do this again. So go to checkout from version control, and we want to select Git as a version control because all the code that we have is sitting in Git. Okay, so now we go back to Git. The link to my Git repo, by the way, is in the description. So if you want to get a direct access to the link on my Git repo, just check in the description below. You see the link to my Git repo. So what you want to do is come to this project, okay, Python for beginners, and then you want to come here to this button that says clone or download. All right, you can download the zip file and just have it on your machine, but it's gonna defeat the purpose of Git because Git is really for collaboration. So the alternative that you can do is you can clone this repo. So to clone it, there's this URL. So when you click on this, it gives us this URL here, which you can just copy by clicking this button. So it's gonna copy this to clipboard. All right, so now I can come back in here. So since I come here, I say Git, I'm gonna now, it's gonna ask for the URL. So I'm gonna paste my Git URL there, right? So it says Python for beginners. All right, now, so what this is gonna do is gonna ask me to log in into GitHub. Okay, so I'm gonna log into GitHub really quickly, and then I'll come back right after I log in. Right, so I've logged in, and it's asked for my authentication code that came from my phone, so I just put that in here, and so this should take me now connect into GitHub. So what this is gonna do is it's gonna connect me to GitHub, and it should give me the way to clone that repository so I can have it locally on my desktop to work with it. All right, you can always do tests in here. All right, and the tests would be successful if there are no issues. Now that I did tests, you can see I have all the repositories that I have available in GitHub. So if you had many repositories in GitHub, and it doesn't have to be your own repository, you can clone a repository from any other person, all right, and have it on your machine. Now, if you make changes, you will not necessarily be able to commit to that repository. You can do a pull request so that you can get your code merged into that repository. But guys, that's a whole separate video on Git, which I'm not gonna really focus on here. So for now, just take away the one basic concept that you can clone my repository and have access to all the code that I share on that repository. All right, or you can create your own and clone it as well. So let's do Python for beginners, which is what we want to clone. This repository, and what is it gonna do? It's gonna clone this repository on my desktop here. So it's gonna put this in this location here on my desktop. But if you notice, I hit clone and nothing happens. So here you will see there is some notifications in events which tells me there's an issue. Right, cannot run Git because it's missing some files. I haven't installed Git locally on my machine. So far we installed Python, we've installed PyCharm, but you haven't installed Git. So we need to install Git on the Windows machine for this to work. So let's just go ahead and click one of these notifications, download. And what this will do is it's gonna take us to the website git.scm sourcecodemanagement.com downloads, and we can go ahead and download the one for Windows. So if you're using Windows, you want to download Git for Windows. If you're using Mac, of course, use the one that works for the operating system that you're using. So I'm gonna go ahead and do run, And what this will do is now it's gonna go ahead, download Git for me and actually install Git on my machine. Then once I go back into PyCharm and I connect to my repository, that should be successful without any issues. So this takes a second to run. I'm gonna pause the video and then we're gonna come back once the download is complete. Alright, so the Git install came up. We're just gonna click through this. So for a lot of these installs, we're gonna be doing very basic stuff. There's nothing we really need to customize here. So just go ahead and click next. Select the folder where it's gonna install Git. Desktop, let's put it on the desktop too as well. Next, nothing to change. Next. So that's the recommended one. In the middle, we just want to keep that. Use OpenSSL, that's fine. Again, all the basic stuff, nothing really to change. All right, install. All right, so basically we've just chosen the default settings, and what this will do is gonna install Git for us. And once we have Git, we can go back into PyCharm. We can download our repository. We can actually clone. We should use the correct terms here. We can clone the repository and then use that for starting to write our Python code. All right, so that install was complete. Now we're ready to click finish. Okay, so we have Git bash installed on our desktop, but I don't really need that. So let's just minimize this for a second. All right, so now that we have Git installed, we're gonna go ahead and try cloning our repository again. So we're gonna select Git. So what I'll do here is I'm just gonna browse to the particular repo I'm trying to clone. Guys, as I mentioned, you can either just, the reason why I can see this here is because this is my own repo, right? For you, you would just be copying the link from the repo as we shown here and pasting that link in here. So that's what you're gonna do. And then once you do that, we can go ahead and hit clone. All right, so there's still an issue. So if I go down here, I can still see there's an issue. Can now run Git, and the reason is what we've done is we've installed Git, and I can clearly see that Git has been installed. And so this is Git bash, and if I go into my C drive, I would see there should be a folder either in my 64. Let's just go back one more time here. So let's go to C, program files, Git. So this is where we have our Git installed. All right, so I can see there's Git on my machine that has been installed, but for some reason, what's happening is we're not seeing Git once we run things in PyCharm. So in PyCharm, we're not seeing Git. And the problem is very similar to the issue that I mentioned a little bit earlier when we were setting up PyCharm itself, that we always have to go to this PC, whatever the name is for yours, is just right click on that, properties. What we need to do is set the class path, right? So we need to set the Git path and add that to our class path so that PyCharm knows where to look for the Git binaries. Basically, that's what's going on. So we click on environment variables. If I do path here and I edit path, all right, so you can see there is no Git in here. All right, so what we need to do is add new, and then we can paste the link to Git. So I just went in here, went to C, program files, Git cmd. All right, so just copy that path into the clipboard. That's what I pasted here. All right, and that's in user variables, and you can always do the same in system variables as well. All right, so if you look here, actually there's Git in there in the system variables. So now we do have Git in our class path. All right, so let's just double check this one. So there you have Git. Okay, so let's do okay on that, and then go back to PyCharm one more time to try this again. See, isn't this fun with programming? You kind of have to go back and forth to resolve some of these issues. But the good news is that you set it up once and it's ready to be used forever and ever. So we're gonna go ahead and clone our Git repository one more time. So go ahead, click on Git, select Python for beginners, or you can just paste the URL in there, clone. All right, so still having an issue. Can now run and find the Git command. So let's go ahead and configure this. All right, so there you have it. This is the issue. So it cannot detect, even though we've added it to the class path, for some reason, it cannot detect the git.exec binary. And this is the file that we need, right? This git. So if I go in there, git.exec, exe. All right, so let's copy that And if you come back in here, we can paste this here and then go ahead, test that. All right, so now it says Git executed successfully. So it's in Git. So go ahead, do OK. All right, let's just do this again. Python for beginner, clone, and now you have it. So now we're able to go ahead and to clone that repository. And so what's happening particularly when we say we're cloning the repository is going out to the Git repo, which I have in the cloud. All right, it's downloading all those files that you see back here and it's bringing them to my desktop. So instead of me sending this to you in email or putting them somewhere for you to download, you're automatically downloading all of this and associating it within your PyCharm so you can start working with it. All right, so it's asking you have checked out PyCharm project, and this is in this folder, user Python for beginner. Would you like to open it? Yes. All right, so if I go in here, that particular project, all those folders have been downloaded for me, and it's available right here within my PyCharm environment for me to use to start working. All right, so if we're working on module 1 and let's say introduction, let's actually do variables. So if you click on variables, now you have that code right here for you to use, right? So imagine this was really complex code. You can have access to it without me having to email anything to you, right? You can just simply clone my repository, make your changes, and then you can commit those changes back if we had the same repository. But since you don't have my repository, what you can do is you can fork that and push your changes and then do a pull request so I can merge it back into my main branch. But Git is a whole separate topic. I wouldn't talk too much about it. This main thing that you want to understand here is how to clone a repository, and you can go ahead and clone my repository. So it's asking me here, Python is not configured for this project. All right, so let's go ahead, show all the interpreters. Let's do that. Set that for this project. That way it's configured Python for this, and we can be able to run our Python code on this particular project. So let's dismiss this. So if I come now to this and I say, let's actually just bring this up for a second here. Bear with me to move things around. So if I come in here and I say run, so what it's gonna do is gonna run the code and that variables, and it's gonna go on the screen and it's gonna print hello world for us. So now every single code, I'm gonna have a lot of code in here. Once you clone my repository, you have access to that. So once we talk about numbers, we talked about strings, I don't need to share you files. If you're following along with my project, you can simply clone my repository, have access to all the things that I'm working on. And now Git is even more powerful. If you're doing this for yourself, you can then make your changes. Let's say print hello world. Let's say, let me just make a change and say Fru made this change today. All right. So I'm going to go ahead, save that. If I go back to Git, what you'll notice here is we're working within this Python basics folder, and I'm editing this file called variables. So you can see this file was edited yesterday. That's the last time I worked on this file. Okay. So what I can do now is if I go back into PyCharm, I'm going to go ahead and save all my changes, which I just do with Control S. I can run this. All right, so it's going to print hello world and it's going to print Fru made this change today. Okay, so now if I want to share this with you or share this with any other person, I can just simply go ahead, click on this icon here. All right, so if you see Git, let me do it slowly. One here is, if you hover over it, this is to check out some stuff and update your project. This one is to commit. So now I've made this change. This change is sitting on my file locally on my machine, but the world doesn't have it. Other developers don't have it. For me to push this back to Git so that somebody else who clones my repository after that has access to this, I now need to commit. I need to commit this. So I just click on this. So that's the icon for commit. So if I go ahead and click on this and say this is first commit for tutorial. All right, I'll just again, when you commit, you want to leave a comment like what exactly did I change. All right, and be more specific so that if somebody sees your commit, they know exactly what you were doing. And this is very important for very big projects, right? Because you're going to be doing a lot of commit and you want to know what exactly that commit was about. If you don't know what commit means, just bear with me. Like I said, there are more detailed videos on Git, so we can always find those. So let's just put a little comment in here, and there are other things that you can set up here. You can see who the author is. I can say the author is me. I made this commit. I can sign off. I can, there are a lot of things that you can do. But what I want to do here is I want to click on this drop down here, and then click on commit and push. So committing means that it saves it locally on your machine, and then commit and push means that it actually pushes it to the remote Git repository. So it's one thing to save it to my local version here. It's another thing to also push it over to Git. So that's what commit and push does. Let me give my email there. So set and commit. All right. So what is done is now it's gonna commit this, okay, and it's gonna push this. So now this is the time for me to push this to my repository. So I'm doing pushing. So here you can see this is being pushed over into the main repo, and I'll show you here in a second once this push is successful. Okay, so okay, right, push is complete. If I switch back to this and I refresh this folder back in GitHub, okay, there you go. 27 seconds ago my push was successful. So whatever change that I made in here has been successfully pushed over. If I open this file, you would see my new line that I added in here, right? Print hello world through made this change. So this is me making the change right from my machine or my desktop. I've been able to commit that change, which means that it's been saved into my local version of Git. Then you push it. You can commit without necessarily pushing. Some developers, because you're doing a lot of development every single day, you just commit locally, and then maybe at the end of the day you push, or maybe every couple hours you push in to your repo. That way other people can take it out. So if you went ahead and cloned my repo as of right now, you would see my changes. All right, now you don't have access to this repo to be able to make changes to it. You can only do pull requests, but that's a whole different topic. But the basic concept, hopefully you get the basic concept of Git and how it interacts with PyCharm and how you can use that for Python programming. I'm going to be using this a lot. All the code that I write, my goal is to just push it at some point wherever I feel comfortable into the different repositories in here. So if you follow me or you're watching my particular projects, if I'm pushing something, you can go ahead and see what exactly it is that I'm doing and what exactly it is that I'm pushing. I would highly recommend that we do that. And you can also, as you can also see, I don't use Git only for this particular project. I use Git or GitHub for many other things, right? So if you go down into my different projects, I have Kubernetes. This is something that I follow, right? If you're not familiar with Kubernetes, this is for like containers. Was built by Google. It's open source. I follow the repo. I kind of see what other people are working on. All right. So if you are a developer and you're writing code, Git is definitely something that you want to pay attention to, and we're going to be using it a lot in this tutorial as we go down the journey of learning Python and mastering Python. All right, guys. I hope this helps. I hope by the end of this that you have Git set up. You have Git connected to your PyCharm. You've cloned my project so that you can see everything that I have. That way, if I make changes, you can simply pull down my changes and have them, my code samples on your machine that you can run. And I highly encourage you to use Git for other projects that you have. Play around with it, create your own project, clone them, and get into more advanced topics like being able to fork a project, pull requests, merge, branches. There's just a whole lot of other things in Git that you can definitely learn and get familiar with. But this is something that we're going to be using, and that's why we wanted to make this in this particular lecture. All right, guys, thanks for watching this lecture, getting set up with Git. In the next lecture, we're going to dive in and start leveraging PyCharm, Python, Git, and actually building and getting down into learning Python itself, the language, the syntax, numbers, strings, operators, loops, and all the other things that you can learn as you can learn in Python to really become proficient with the language. Guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in our next video.